Hello, welcome to Share by Mate Talks. We are here talking about what it takes to change our mind. I think this is an interesting discussion in light of what's happened lately with Charlie Kirk and all that, with the shooting. I'm seeing an incredible outpouring of support for this death. Obviously, I don't want anyone to die, Charlie Kirk or anyone else. Um, it's just been interesting, I think, to notice the emotional response. I think there's been a huge emotional response of people caring about Charlie Kirk. Um, but obviously, lots of other people die, and it's not like anybody wants those people to die, or it's not like nobody cares, or there isn't empathy. And I'm interested to, it's kind of interesting to notice the emotions don't come up. We don't control our emotions probably as much as we think. So there's a lot of emotional thoughts and feelings, about Charlie Kirk, but those emotions don't jump up for other people. Why is that? Why is it that a kid could die in a shooting in Chicago and, we don't post a whole bunch of thoughts and prayers for that kid? We can't post thoughts and prayers for every person that dies. So why do we choose to care so much about Charlie Kirk? Why is there such an emotional attachment to him and not to other people? And I'm going to argue that maybe he's on our team, and if he's on our team, then maybe we care a lot about it. So anyway, why do we change our mind? We are going continue on in the book, and remember, what's great about this show is if you'd like to jump in, call in, uh, you are welcome to. I'm going to go ahead and share the link right now, and if you'd like to join the show, happy to take people one at a time, and you can either try to change my mind about something. If you watched last night's stream, maybe my pro not caring that much about the bombing in Israel or Israel bombing Qatar, which I don't know a ton about, but my current stance is that I can understand why they did that. You're welcome to discuss that. Discuss that. You're welcome to discuss anything else you may have heard last night. Issa and I were going back and forth. I'm against rent control. Issa was sound a little bit more for it. Things like that. You're welcome to call in, and we can discuss those things. Or if you just want to call in about changing your mind in general, go ahead and click the link and join. So the book we are discussing is called How Minds Change, and we are in chapter 2. So chapter 1, we had kind of gotten to the point where it was like, hey, this author was saying, I don't really think it's arguments that change people's minds. I think it's something else. It's not like the facts. We like to all think that it's the facts that are going to change everyone's mind, and it does not appear that it's always the facts that change everyone's mind. So he goes into chapter 2, and he's going to use an illustration. He's going to talk about a particular group of people that do deep canvassing, they call it. And what they do is change mind, and they seem to be very effective. So this is they call themselves the lab, I guess, and they're like in a part of the LGBTQ center, and they are working on trying to change everyone's mind. And so they'll go door to door, and there was a bunch of studies done on their techniques, and one of the original studies was discredited because the person who did the study messed it up, but they did a whole bunch of follow-up studies, and it does seem that what they do works. And what they do is pretty interesting. So they knock on doors one on one, and the first thing they do is establish a rapport, right? They just joke around about things there. They kind of get to be friends. Establish that, hey, this is like a comfortable, safe, not combative. We're buddy up. Um, so on and so forth. So you kind of become friends with the person. The next thing that they do is they ask an open-ended question. Reflect on the subject. Why might you be against gay marriage? Tell me about, why you're against it. How do you feel about gay marriage? Or what's your experience with gay marriage? Or who do you what do you know about it or whatever. You ask these very open-ended questions, and you just sort of let the people talk, and you let them talk, and you let them talk. Actually, It reminds me of chaplaincy quite a bit. When I was a chaplain and we would go visit people in the hospital, um, what they would train us to do was they would be like, you're going to be really tempted. People are going to tell you their problems, and you're going to want to try to fix their problems for them. And in reality, you probably can't fix their problems. You don't have, but what are you going to do? Give them a whole bunch of money or spend a whole bunch of time outside of the hospital, whatnot? It's very unlikely you're going to be able to fix their problems. Now, maybe you could bring them a Bible or a Quran or whatever book they might want, but you're not going to be able to fix their problems. So what you would do is you would talk to the people, you'd ask them questions, you'd be genuinely clear. So you'd like try to emotionally connect with them, and then they talk, and at some point they may actually change, come up with the solution themselves, right? And it's similar in this situation. They would canvas these people. They would ask them opening questions. They'd ask how they feel about different things, and ultimately these people would sometimes change their mind. And what would be interesting is they wouldn't be argued into it. There wouldn't be any facts shared really. There wouldn't be any argumentation. It would just they would just do this and people would change their mind. As a matter of fact, one guy's response was like, yeah, we should just let these people do what they want. What do we care? Right? It was like, wait a second. When we started this conversation, you were very against it. And when you ended it, you weren't against it. And it was all because of this open, open-ended questions and sort of letting people talk about it. Um, I Killed Earl says, I feel very indifferent about Charlie Kirk. His babies deserve to have a father, but he spread misinformation and hatred. I'm not happy he's dead, but I'm not sad either. Yeah, it's an interesting response. If he's not on your team, it's not like you wanted him dead. I feel similar. It's not like I wanted Charlie Kirk to die or him or anybody else. Yeah, I agree. His children not having a father is not good. Certainly don't want that either. I'm sure his wife loved him, and I'm sure many other people loved him. So it's not like I was rooting for him to die, but people die every day, and I don't want any of those people to die either. And so I didn't have a particularly strong emotional attachment to him, but I see a lot of people that did, and so I think it's because um, maybe the fact that he was on their team. He was one of them. Um, so we continue on with the book here. So at the end of the conversation, they would often kind of revisit, have you changed your mind about this? Where have you gone? Do you think about this the same after we've talked? And what's interesting is that they you know sometimes did change their mind. As a matter of fact, I think their success rate was like 1 in 10. 1 in 10 people would change their mind on just like a 20-minute conversation that involved no facts, that involved no studies, that involved no argument. All they did was just use this strategy of asking this open-end question and to establish rapport and have it be safe and so on and so forth. Now, maybe this work I thought about this, like maybe this is particularly easy in the LGBTQ discussion because for a lot of people, in America, and a lot of people are like, hey, you do what you want, I do what I want. If you're not bothering me, I don't care that much. And it seems like the gay marriage might be something like that, right? Like, well, if you're not making me get married, what do I care? So I'm not sure, but this was effective. Ah, hello, dudes. Max is here. He has joined us. Good to see you, Max. Good to have you on in the chat today. So, open any questions? They would talk to them, be safe, ask them to explain why they feel a certain way about the particular issue, and then they would revisit. Now, what's interesting is they're trying to figure out why it works. Why does this work? And in this particular chapter, it doesn't look like they initially knew why it worked. They don't know why. As a matter of fact, the people that do the deep canvassing, I'm not sure they know why. They have some guesses, they have some thoughts, but they're not totally sure either. If you want to come in and talk about it with me, or if you have something you wanted to argue with me about, just click on that StreamYard link right there. You're welcome to join me right now, and we can discuss it. Or there's maybe something else you can think of that you want to argue about. Maybe we can talk Max into coming on for a couple minutes and chatting with us about this as well. But So they studied it. They're trying to figure out why it works, and they're trying to figure out why people are convinced by this method of just talking to them, being open-ended, and then asking open-ended questions, emotionally connecting, talking to them about it, letting them talk. As a matter of fact, seems like them talking significantly more is the way to go. You don't want to talk. So when you see debates, I often think, oh, look, so and so's winning the debate because they're being aggressive, they're talking more, they're getting more of their side, they're sharing a lot of facts. I mean, that may not matter at all. Isn't that amazing? Like you see, oh look, so and so's controlling the conversation so well. This really looks good. I don't know. I mean, this isn't studied in the context of debating, but kind of messes up my ideas of who I think might be um, winning a debate. And so, what are some limitations of this system? One on one. They do one-on-one canvassing. I think 2 weeks ago, I was gone last week at a conference, but I think 2 weeks ago, we talked about how do we change people's mind en masse. Well, we might talk about that more, but we might also, kind of discuss that in more detail. I Kildare says marriage is a piece of paper and a tax deduction, but committed couples should be able to make medical decisions, own property equally with each other, and legally have those uh, protections. Yeah, there's a lot of legal stuff that comes along with the marriage stuff, but also it can be like an identity thing, right? Like some people really take identity with stuff, right? They really want to be called a certain thing, and if they really want to be called married, are we gonna let them be called married? Are we gonna have society say they're married? I mean, in the trans debate, it seems like people really identify, well, I want to be a man or a woman, and it seems really important to be able to call them that. And so you could just say, well, does it technically just matter? It's just a title. Just does it technically matter? But they seem to really care, and it seemed like maybe people really caring that they're called married could be a thing. I'm not sure. I've like talking out of a lot of ignorance here. I don't have a ton of experience with this. Uh, but maybe that would uh, be the case. So that is our chapter this week, and I think it is interesting because I think it's so far I found it very very interesting, but a little depressing because changing minds would be so incredibly slow in this particular avenue, one on one with people, and I think incredibly risky. Meaning, if I go talk to people I don't know one on one and they slam the door on me, which of course, when these people do the deep canvassing, that happens. Sometimes they just move on. Doesn't seem like the person's gonna be too interested in having a good faith chit chat. So they'll just kind of go on to the next house. But if you're trying to say, well, I want to convince people in my life, you know, you're not exactly just like, well, I'm just going to bring this subject up, hope they don't get super mad at me, hope it doesn't cause a super big problem, because you can't just move on. They're like your family member or a close friend or whatever. You don't get to just, you know, kind of move on at the end of the day. And so, therefore, I think that I'm hoping to get some more information in this book that might be able to help in different kinds of situations. For example, last night when I went to play cards, you know, could I have brought up a political subject or whatever and asked people to say what they thought about it and so on and so forth? Maybe, but maybe I get the wrong person on the wrong day and they kind of start getting upset and yelling. And according to my reading my chapter in the deep canvassing book, I should just move on to the next door. I'm sitting around at the table playing cards. There's no leaving. And I'm gonna play with them, next week too. So it'd be nice to be able to find some techniques and some things that I might be able to convince people around me a little bit better, or maybe be able to figure out what convinces me, and maybe thinking about what might be causing me to be manipulated. You know what I mean? Like maybe someone's using this technique on me. Do I really want to change my mind? Is this just all these emotional games? Am I in tune with what I'm feeling well enough to know why my thoughts might be changed on something? It's very difficult to kind of know. I Killed Oil jumps in again. I want people to feel happy in whatever way makes them happy, but the people gaslighting everyone and telling me how hard it is to be a woman today can be sexually Blank all the way off. All right. Well, strong feelings on that one. I'm not sure I have a lot of strong feelings on how hard it is to be a woman. I haven't been one yet, so I guess I wouldn't know. Hey, tell me more. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're on your PC, you want to jump on, get on here. We can chit chat, see what's on your mind. I've been loosely keeping up as I've been listening across the room. Well, sometimes loosely is the best way. So glad to have you in here. So if we want to think about some particular subject where this might affect us, I think we could think about the bombing in Israel, in Qatar, and why we might change our mind one way or another on this. Is this a good thing? So I'm thinking about whether it's a good thing. So should I change my mind one way or another? What's my initial reaction? My initial reaction is I think that if a country gets attacked and a war started, wars are bad and lots of people get killed. And that's how it goes. And you say, okay, okay, I have this feeling that it's bad. A lot of people get killed. So am I saying we want to just kill as many people as possible? Well, no, I think you should try to limit casualties. But do I think that limiting casualties is the ultimate goal of the people in the war? I don't tend to think so. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the war at all. The war wouldn't have started. Clearly, whoever started the war wasn't worried about casualties as their number one thing. So that isn't my number one thing. But we will bring on our first guest of the day. Tell me more. I will stop my little rant.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
All right, just fine. Am I coming through all right? I had to change some stuff with my mic a few days ago, so I don't know if I'm loud enough.
I hear you as clearly as ever.
All right, awesome, awesome. Okay, so yes, I guess really the hot button topic has been the whole Charlie Kirk thing, huh?
Absolutely. I've kind of said my piece about it. What are your thoughts on it?
You know, I I'm not a fan of politics. I'm not a fan of this side of the aisle, that side of the aisle, right down whatever, you know, however people choose to like politically identify and things like I've never really bought into it. I don't try to subscribe to one thought process or the other. I try to stay fluid in how I think about or deal with social and political things. Um, much like I do with pretty much anything else, whether it's science or just my daily life, I try to stay open enough to where, like, if something new comes up or if there's an issue that does require a bit more finesse, I can try and deal with it a little bit more gracefully rather than just being, oh, red state, conservative, or I'm liberal and proud, or so the I know it's really like politically motivated because he was extremely conservative and he had the Turning Point USA and he did all this like really outspoken conservative young America, kind of like trying to red pill people thing. And then there was like a lot of people who were really against him because they thought he was hateful and stuff. I always I kind of look at him kind of like under the same lens as like people like uh oh man, Matt Walsh and
Oh yeah, there's. I mean, they don't cover the same subject necessarily,
yeah,
but they.
yeah, kind of like the it's like it's under the same kind of, like, they're constantly saying something kind of like, whoa, and then everybody jumps on and they're like, oh yeah, well, here's my thought and here's my thought. And I feel like Charlie Kirk was a little more like, he was a lot nicer about it, a little more uh debonair about it, I guess. Um, and I think you had said before, like I said, I was loosely listening. You'd said that he had like a conversion rate or like I changed my mind rate.
Not he, the people
The,
that were doing the canvassing, this deep
okay,
canvassing
okay,
in the book, yeah,
okay,
had a conversion rate
okay,
of 1
yeah,
in 10. Yeah. Hmm.
and it's so like, and I do understand how like that happens. You know, people can change their mind. They and 1 in 10 is pretty good. You know,
That was why it was such a huge deal. I mean, that's why it made this
yeah.
book. I mean, that was like an incredibly high success rate. People couldn't hardly believe it.
Inflammatory, yes, Earl. There, that's a good word. Inflammatory. They would make remarks, and yes, they were inflammatory, and people would jump on it. Yeah, I like that. It's a reactionary word. Um, uh, yeah, and like they're all kind of like inflammatory people. Even like a really extreme example, I think, is like Steven Crowder. He's a little more like I'll punch you in the mouth kind of outspoken about it. But yeah, I think that there's a huge assumption. It's an unknown, but I think that there's a huge assumption that the assassination of Charlie Kirk was done by a liberal individual. Um, and I think that's a massive unfounded assumption to make. Just from what I see, like I try to stay away from it, but it makes its way into every kind of like circle, like memes
Yeah,
or on Twitter
I
and
haven't kept up. I
stuff.
haven't seen that they found the guy, the person or anything.
I don't know if they have yet or not. I'm pretty sure they still haven't. I checked my Twitter for esports earlier, and I saw something on the side. It was like trending or something like that, and it said "find him." Like the hashtag "find him" is trending. So I guess it's they still haven't found him. No, they haven't.
Earl's understanding is they haven't found me yet either. So
Yeah, and the assumption that I'm seeing from a lot of people is that, oh, you know, this conservative, this young hot button conservative guy. Oh, there goes my camera. Just was assassinated, and they think he was killed by uh, someone on the other side of the aisle. I think that's an unfair assumption to make.
what do you think will happen if they find out it was a conservative that Charlie Kirk didn't love Trump enough?
You know, that would be unbelievably interesting, and not in a funny kind of way or anything like that. I find that like infighting, especially for like in politics, like, you know, oh, you're not red enough, you're not blue enough, kind of, you know, like no true Scotsman. Like you're not as into it as I am, so you're just as bad as those guys on the other side. Uh, that would, I don't know, because I don't see how somebody could make that argument. Because, you know, just about anybody can have anything to say against Donald Trump or any conservative politician, and not 100% be on board with everything that they're about. And that's fine. And you can still just be just as ultra conservative as those guys. You know, you just don't see eye to eye on one or two
Yeah,
things.
but what would be the reactions? I don't know what you know, I'm from the
Uh-huh.
Midwest, and so you know I have a lot of you know, pray for Charlie Kirk things going on big time. Um, what would be the emotional reaction of people that are obviously very emotionally into the fact that Charlie
Mhm.
Kirk was a Christian man, he was a good conservative, he was a family man, and he was killed. These Democrats, I mean, I'm almost certainly saying, you know, look out, the liberals are terrible. What if they found out it was an even more conservative person? What would their like emotions do?
Ooh, I don't. I think there would be maybe a little bit. Mm, I think there would
While you're thinking
probably
about it, this is
be.
what I think. I said this last night, and what I think it would be, they would stop talking about it. Is what they would do. They would just push it to the side. They might
Mm,
say, we need to turn down the temperature in the country, you know, which, you know, it's somehow Obama's fault for that. but they would just try to move on from that. That would be my guess. I mean, I don't know your thoughts, but
You say that, and it like that makes me think of like other things where like like go to sports. That's another thing where people are like really divided. My team's better than your
it
team.
reminds me of sports
Yeah.
so much. I think it's just like sports. I
Okay,
think
so
it's just like
I'm a
sports.
Patriots fan,
Uh-huh.
and I know people, their immediate thought is, "Oh, you're just Tom Brady."
We all
I was a
can't be perfect.
Patriots
We
fan
all can't be perfect.
during Bledsoe. Okay, so don't shoot me. And I'm
Yep.
a Patriots fan after Brady, so like, but anytime the Patriots were doing good, I was on a high horse about it.
Mhm.
And people didn't like that. But the second they would lose a game, I'd clam up.
Yep. Yep.
I
I'm
wouldn't
a
want to say
Nebraska
anything
fan
about it.
because I'm rooting for Nebraska. It's a
Who
lot
else
really
is?
easy to
Hey.
talk Nebraska in the '90s, and
Oh
now
yeah.
that we barely made our first bowl game in the last 8,000 years, I'm not saying too much about it. So I no. Let's I wanted to bring out a comment from the chat I saw earlier. Oh
Mhm.
yeah, do we have or do we have to, or can we expect defense after attack to be proportional? Can defense be proportional? How many collateral damage or how much collateral damage is proportional? I think a question very difficult. I do, and unless Tell Me More wants to chat about it, I'm gonna come back to that later. If you want to jump on the stream, we can talk about it. That'd be a fun next subject. So yeah, wouldn't it be really really interesting if the guy really was conservative, had been a
Yeah.
conservative, but wanted the Epstein files released or something, and so he was mad at Charlie Kirk about that. I mean, that would just be so
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, I think and I'll bounce off of what she said. I do think that there will be a very large majority of people who will just clam up and be like, okay, let's sweep this under, let's forget about it. I'm moving on to the next thing. And that I think that would probably trigger maybe some kind of cognitive dissonance where they just don't want to have to think about it or deal with that kind of thing. So they just shut it off. Like, okay, well, that I'm not going to deal with. That's a can of worms. I'm just, next thing, hop on whatever. But I do think that there will probably be a more loud minority of people in that camp that will try and pull out how Charlie Kirk was still better than whatever this other guy was like after, whether he, they get a manifesto from or something like that, like saying why he did it, or because Charlie Kirk wasn't read enough, or what have you. I do think that there will be some tribalism, and if that is the case, then there will be some kind of major infighting. People are going to have to come out for it one way or the other, make some kind of radical statement condemning this or siding with one or the other. Because if it turns out he's deeper red than Charlie was, who do people side with? Do they want to go with the guy who's closer
I,
to the?
it's Obama's fault, dude. Obama
Thanks,
Obama
Obama.
turned up the rhetoric. Everything was fine before Obama, and so it's just his fault that the temperatures have been turned up. How about this? So I'm going to argue
Uh-huh.
that more legislation there's a chance that more legislation or executive orders get done regarding violence based on this event than school shootings. You think that is true, or will this blow over before any executive orders or legislation gets signed?
And that's interesting because it did take place on a college campus, and so it is school shooting adjacent, or not even adjacent. It is. Man, that is a really good point,
Because
actually.
if it happened in Chicago, I'm
Uh-huh.
guessing the National Guard would be in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it happened in Utah with tons of guns around. I thought that was super
Yeah.
interesting. So, I
Very
don't know.
conservative religious state.
Yeah, yeah. I think it might be an
Hmm.
open carry state.
You might be right. I used to be up on all that. I used to work at Bass Pro, Gander Mountain Academy Sports, and I used to be up on all that. I wouldn't be able to tell you now. But yeah, you know, legislation on this kind of violence might very well be turned up. I think yes. Yes. I don't know about in the form of executive orders or anything, but I can guarantee you there is going to be some kind of uptick in lobbying. There's going to be some kind of social engineering campaign, and you're going to see it all over Twitter and YouTube Shorts and TikTok and such. Yeah,
Well,
I do think that will happen.
Debatable D says no one passing gun control reform. Well, I agree with that. Maybe a bill for armed security at campus or more police presence. That's exactly
Yeah,
the kind of things I'm thinking of, right?
yeah.
I don't think we're gonna suddenly buck the gun lobby or anything. But I wouldn't be surprised if something got passed. Earl says, I is it bad that I'm kind of hoping he doesn't get caught? And I'm like, I think I can understand the feeling. I think it's probably better that assassins get caught, but I mean, I can understand the sort of the indifference of the situation, because this is an interesting thing. There was also a school shooting in Evergreen, Colorado, maybe an hour after the Kirk shooting. No one's talking about that. A small mountain town. I don't
Ah,
even know about that. That's how bad it is. That's what I'm saying. I'm sure there are
mhm.
other things that are happening that are bad that we don't have an emotional reaction to, right? That we don't post about, that we don't try to have moments of silences for, and everywhere we can go. I mean, we're not putting our flag at half staff because of the other, of this school shooting that I hadn't even heard of. The emotions around this are just so incredible, and the sports team's the best I got. Maybe this book will help me talk about it more, but I think that's the best illustration I could come up with.
Yeah, I don't know. It does, because I didn't know about the thing in Evergreen, Colorado, until just now when it was mentioned by CK. Um, and that is unbelievably wild. Typically, like a school shooting happens and people are going to try and make a big deal out of it. I think at this point, it's more foreign media that makes a bigger deal out of it than domestic media, which is saying something. I think probably somewhere, but yeah, that's disproportionate. First of all, and second, I think that it has a lot to do with the profile, because school shootings are sadly almost a commonplace thing now, and people are just like, oh, another school got shot up, and they just kind of dissociate from it, and they're like, well, that happened again. And human lives may have been at risk or lost, or at the very least somebody got injured, and like there should be more care for that. Uh and and while I don't think that it's more important that we pay attention to a school shooting than a politician who got shot and killed, anybody getting shot and killed in a public space like that it's tragic. Shouldn't happen. Shouldn't be a commonplace thing ever. But the reality is that it is. Why do we give it more weight? And that's something I'm
It's
sitting here thinking about.
There's an emotional connection
Yeah,
somehow,
yeah,
right? Somehow.
yeah.
Earl clarifies. I maybe put the indifference maybe was my thoughts more than hers. She says it's not indifference. It's avoid knowing the shooting political leanings altogether because I'm terrified of what happened if it's left leaning. So for her, she's arguing a little more strategic rather than
That's exactly what we were
indifference.
talking about before. Because if he turns out to be ultra conservative, now all of a sudden, you know, what do the conservatives do? What side of the aisle internally are they going to fall on?
Mhm.
Moral high ground says you defend Charlie, but their political leanings, which are going to now persevere past Charlie Kirk, do they go with the guy who was more in line with them, this guy who they see as more conservative than Charlie Kirk? What way do they go? And like we had said, there's going to be people who are just going to shut down on it and not talk about it, and not want to deal with it and move on to something else. And I think that's probably adjacent to the way Earl feels about it. Like, I don't want to know their political leanings, because if they're left, then, you know, Earl may be a left-leaning individual. What then? You know, what do you have to say about your ideologies? Now people are going to be like, oh, that's your side. That's your people. That's who you align with. And necessarily, no. Earl, I could confidently say from my past talks with Earl doesn't side with somebody being homicidal. I don't think that Earl would, and she can correct me if I'm, Earl, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that you would advocate for somebody going out and killing somebody for a difference of opinion ever. And so, no, this person isn't on your side of the aisle specifically. They aren't in line with your ideologies. They just happen to politically identify with the same party as you, and you don't want to have to deal with that. Because people are tribalistic that way.
Yeah, debatable. D says, CK, yeah, it's crazy how many shootings is too many before sensible gun laws get passed. These are the kind of things we need to change our mind about. When the banning trans people from having guns, one team was more amenable to that than the others. That one's a little hard to know. I didn't hear enough conservatives talk about that. Obviously, if you're really inflammatory conservatives, we're fine with it, but I just don't know the percentages. Like, I didn't talk to any Republicans in my life about it, but I would kind of be surprised if they were for it, but maybe they would have been. I'm not sure how popular that got, or if that was just a crazy thing that people said. Not super sure. Tell me more. What else do we got to cover? We got one person in the queue. I don't want to push you away. If you got something else you wanted to chat about before we get going, but thanks so much for jumping on, dude. Hope you'll be able to jump on next week as well. So
yeah, I mean, I know I missed the past couple of weeks, but you know, life hits you and you get busy. But I do want to say I do apologize, or I did not. I don't want to cast any kind of like vision of you upon anybody else. Earl says they're aggressively centric, and so that's my fault for assuming you're one way or the other. I do apologize for that. So yeah, and still, no, absolutely not. You're not going to advocate for somebody murdering somebody for a difference of opinion. So yeah, that's all. I guess that's all I can say on that. And yeah, I'll dip out and I'll keep watching.
Hey, sweet.
I'll be in the chat.
We'll be seeing you around.
All right, man.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Dr. J. How you doing, brother? Or bud?
What's
you don't like
new?
brother. Nothing much really. Just still in a degree of shock with what's happened with Charlie Kirk. I disagree fundamentally with a huge number of his positions, but one of the things that I certainly respected and appreciated him for was his advocacy for freedom of speech in the United Kingdom. You know, we've got people in prison in the UK that are doing more time in prison for spicy tweets than pederasts and rapists, and he took umbrage at that. I still can't and don't really want to wrap my head around that. But the subject of this section is called "Change My Mind." Charlie Kirk had a particular position that he holds to, that was founded in his religious belief, and we can all feel a particular way about that. That is everybody's right. He did seem to be trying to change people's mind with dialectic, with discussion, with debate. You cannot tell me, nor could you convince me, that he categorically stated repeatedly, numerous occasions, it was almost a mantra as much as his religion was, that when we stop talking to one another, we start fighting one another. This is something that he said repeatedly. And he was trying to change people's minds, and the response to him trying to change people's minds with discussion is a 30-06 round. traveling at 3,000 feet per second, punching a hole in his neck in front of his kids and his wife. How the fuck did we get here?
Well, the
And
analyzing why he got shot is a little tough because we don't know who shot him or why. You know what I mean? It could be like
No,
his ex-girlfriend or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I am making some assumptions, but he was a conservative, stood on a stage in a conservative state, making a conservative argument as a conservative representative of the public party, the Republican Party, mid-sentence. If this turns out to be
but like the second guy who tried to assassinate Trump had historically been a Republican, so it's just very hard to know.
I get it, but
my guess is this person had tons of PTSD or something related to that, had a ton of military training, which is why he was able to pull this off. And
I actually disagree with that.
Has mental issues. Could be wrong, but we're all kind of guessing. I don't know really.
Yeah, it is conjecture. It is guesswork at the moment. There's some rumor around like that some of the they found the rifle. It was sort of like an older version of a hunting rifle. It was chambered in 30-06 at an integrated magazine, and supposedly there were 3 other rounds within the integrated magazine that had some kind of indication on them that it was like an anti-fascist, pro-transgender message. But that has supposedly been leaked out of the FBI or the DOJ or something, but not corroborated yet. So it might be complete crap. I don't know. I legitimately don't know.
Yeah, the first picture we got was an old white guy that has supposedly done it, which I think.
Well, he was literally in the crowd going, "Shoot me, shoot me!" I think because he's probably not all there. So just maybe. Like some people are claiming that it was like an intentional distraction, that he was sort of like a patsy that was there to try and distract the security so that the legitimate person could get away. When I say legitimate person, I don't mean legitimate in terms of their actions, but the actual shooter. So just before anybody.
You clearly have been following this more closely than I. I have not delved into the details of what we know about so far, especially this morning.
Well, because I'm and this is what I wanted. The reason why when you say that, so school shootings, any kind of shooting, like if you had a school shooting where like a 6-year-old girl is shot and killed, or Charlie Kirk is shot and killed, if you forced me to choose between the two, like a weird sort of trolley problem. I'm sorry, Charlie, you're a 31-year-old man. The 6-year-old, if you made me choose who I would choose to save, the 6-year-old girl is gonna live, and you are, unfortunately, as horrific as it is, going to be sacrificed. And I think I would expect anybody, if I was the person that was going to be shot as the adult male, I would expect other people to choose me.
And I think that's probably most people's view, right? Like, do you think we'd find very many people that would disagree with you on that?
I wouldn't judge you morally for it. I would think you've made. So that might have been my signal on this end.
Yeah,
I think that, but the problem is the reason that I think that people are so visceral around Charlie Kirk being killed is because he stood like he represented their ideals, their political position, and they see this as like but because of what I think, because we have a political disagreement, somebody thinks that it is justified and virtuous for me to be killed. And I think that's the bit that scares the shit out of people, and that's why they're so visceral.
He's on their team, right? He's one of them. He's on their team. He's one of their guys, and so when people talk bad about. But when people talk about bad about the Nebraska Cornhuskers, I'm not quite as attached as them I used to be. I would take it as like a personal offense, almost emotionally anyway, right? Which makes no sense. Why? It's laundry. It's a school I've never attended. Like, why would I care so much?
Yeah.
But you did, right?
But and I, like I said, I disagree with Charlie Kirk on quite a lot. I suppose the other thing, and it's not really I think the thing, like with sort of like spinning the segment on its head slightly, you are right. We are making assumptions about the motivations of the person in question. I would be very surprised if it turns out that this person is on the extreme right end of the spectrum. I don't think it's unreasonable. Whilst I'm not going to tell you that it's impossible, but I don't think it's unreasonable to be leaning towards the fact that this person is on the extreme left by virtue of the fact that Charlie Kirk is on the right. I'm not one of those people that think he was a fascist or a neo-Nazi. As best as I can tell, accusing people like Charlie Kirk of being fascistic, as a person with Jewish ancestry and Jewish DNA, it's difficult to offend me, but millions of people were killed by Nazis and fascists, and Charlie Kirk was not that. You know, if he was that, he would have presented himself in an entirely different way. I think he was a virtuous person. He just, like with Max and I, like Max is a communist and I'm a free market capitalist. We disagree on most things in one shape, way, form, or another. But I would be enraged if somebody took a pot at him, because I consider him, as much as we disagree, I consider him to be an honourable and a virtuous person. And I think the same has gone on here with Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, I didn't follow Charlie Kirk super closely. I mean, I saw a few of his debates with college students on campus, but I didn't consume enough of his content to talk enough about him. Earl says Charlie Kirk did what the left cannot: have civilized discussion without screaming and violently canceling anyone who doesn't stand a lockstep in line. Well, this is very interesting because I am more like in the Joe Biden Democrat. I think boring Democrat is the way to go. But there are definitely people who are not boring Democrats who are willing to cancel, and I tend to think, in my head at least, those are different people. You know what I mean? They're not the same. They're not the same kind of people, and they don't get along with each other, actually. And I think in online spaces they don't tend to get along. But I do agree the far left can absolutely superly cancel you about everything. As a matter of fact, I'd say Ezra Klein got into the super, if you know who he is, he wrote the book called Abundance or whatever it's called. I did read it.
Yeah.
And he was really he canceled what that famous atheist guy, he did his absolute dead level best to cancel him. And now he's kind of moved to the Joe Biden thing, but I think it's just sort of interesting because I see those as different. That super agree with us or we'll try to destroy you personally, and then the boring Democrat, and I see those as differently. Yeah. I could be wrong that those should be separate, but in my head those are separate.
We've interacted a reasonable amount. I didn't think that you would have endorsed anything Charlie Kirk ever had to say, obviously, but I get where you're coming from. Super quick.
It's not Hitchens. It's he's still podcasts. He's still doing stuff. What's his name? He's like
Sam Harris.
Sam Harris. Yeah.
He's a neuroscientist. Yeah. Yeah, it all hit the fan with him about a year ago when he was on a trigonometry podcast, where he said that Hunter Biden could have had the dead bodies of children in his basement, and it wouldn't have been as bad as anything Trump did.
Ezra Klein got mad at him before that, and it was about not being left enough. I forget exactly what the issue was, but I
remember watching a podcast with Sam Harris where he goes, I was on holiday and my wife got pissed off with me because I couldn't put my phone down because it was essentially like blowing up whilst he was supposed to be on holiday with his kids. And this is when Ezra Klein decided to start shredding him. But I mean, quickly with regards to what's happened with Charlie Kirk and the notion of this guy being a professional shooter. So I have some training. I actually did some basic training with the military as a volunteer reservist. I also do quite a lot of shooting myself, like target shooting, competition shooting, and small game shooting. 200 yards with a 30-06 is a chip shot. I can do that with iron sights. I don't need optics. I don't need anything. The angle at the distance that he was at, 3 stories up, you don't need trigonometry to account for this. You could put round on round. Your sub MOA at this distance is grouping with the size of it into the size of a dime. This is an easy shot. The reason that this person was not a professional shooter is they were sat on the top of the goddamn building, dressed in black like some fucking ninja, like they watched it in a movie, silhouetting themselves against a blue sky. This is not a professional shooter, not even close. The fact that they got away is by virtue of the fact that it's an open university campus. People are comparing this to the Trump attempted assassinations. This is an open university campus. Kirk is a private citizen, and he doesn't have Secret Service protection. They don't cordon off the area. They don't have helicopters overhead. They don't have snipers on Overwatch. Charlie Kirk put himself on a stage in clear view of everybody in an elevated position with wind markers clearly visible around him. This was not a professional shooter, and anybody who thinks it is knows nothing about shooting.
I didn't even know how far they were away or what gun they shot, so I really have no comment. I'm no expert on it. My guessing in the military was purely off of he got sniped, but obviously I didn't. You're clearly following this significantly better than I am. I knew so few details, so I have no strong opinion on any of that to even just argue with you about it.
No, I'm not trying to argue with anybody. I'm just my opinion of this. Is that if this was anybody who had any kind of formal training, they would have shot from cover from within a building. You don't stick a muzzle out of a window or sit on top of a building, especially if you're not using this reeks of action movie, not actual training.
So back to the change. We just got a few more minutes. I gotta go back to work, so I wanted to ask you, if we find out it was a left-leaning person and they shot him, how are minds going to be changed or just solidified? If we find out it's the right-leaning person, will any minds be changed? Are any minds going to be changed about anything based on this?
If it's a right-leaning person, it's not going to be ignored because I think it's too big to be ignored. But certainly the inferences that people draw from it, surely they have to change. They can't not. Like if it turns out this is a person who is on the extreme right that thinks that Charlie Kirk of all people is too progressive, who even I think he is right of me. As far as Charlie Kirk is concerned, I would be on the left compared to him. But so, for example, let's say Andrew Wilson, for example, has said that he agrees with. He thinks Charlie Kirk is too liberal. So let's say, for argument's sake, it's somebody and I'm not accusing Andrew Wilson of anything. I don't want people, don't pile on me. I'm just using this as an example because he is a right-wing person who has said that Charlie Kirk is to the left of him. He thinks Charlie Kirk is doing the country a disservice because he's not right-wing enough. If it turns out it's somebody like that, then honestly, I don't really know what would happen. It can't be ignored. Charlie Kirk handed Trump the right-wing youth vote by a massive margin. This person is too big, is too significant, and is too important to the conservative, the right-wing campaign for this to just be sort of swept.
Any minds be changed? Anyone think differently? Will it matter? Will people just because there's I don't know. I'm throwing some conjectures out. What if we find out they're even further right, and the people on the right just go, yeah, crazy guy on the super far right. Obviously, there's just crazy people sometimes, and so
I think
what can we do? And then if we find out it's a far left person, the far left people go, oh well, yeah, well, there's crazy people that call themselves Democrats too. It doesn't represent me. Yeah. No one changes their mind about anything. I don't know if that what will happen, but it seems possible.
I think both things are true. So I think it depends on where you stand right now, what particular tile you stood on. So if it turns out this person is on the extreme right, then the right wing will try and hang it on like mental health. Mm-hmm. And if it turns out that this person is on the extreme left, then the extreme right or the people on the right will hang it on this was weaponized political ideology and they were of sound mind. And the left will say, no, this person was mentally unwell. I think that you can literally switch the positions. You can just swap the cards.
Hey Earl, I think I saw you on there. Jump on. I got 5 more minutes if you want to jump on. I'm sure Dad knows best to let you come on. I saw you come in and out. But yeah, we got 4 more minutes. 5 more minutes.
If Phil wants to hop in, I'll hop out.
Yeah.
My final thoughts are: this is a complete and total tragedy. Nobody's winning from this. I have a fairly robust constitution and stomach. I did go and seek out the actual footage of what happened, the uncensored actual footage. That was a shitty way to go.
Mm-hmm.
That was a shitty way to go. It was quick, but
yep, that was. I agree. There's no good that can come from it. You don't want assassinations going in your country. I'm gonna jump you off. Dad knows best.
Yeah,
Thanks for showing up. I get my last few minutes here. I'm gonna chat with Earl. So, hey, how's it going?
Hello. Can you hear me?
I do hear you just fine.
Okay. Yeah, I tried to get on my phone, but then it wasn't letting me hear you guys. And I was like, oh no. So I had to hop on my computer real quick. Yes, I will make this fast. So I am, like I said, pretty aggressively in the center. I have been personally canceled by the far left. And so we were talking in the chat about the far left and the far right sort of being just as equally dangerous. And I was going to quickly make a explanation for why that is. Tankies in particular are, the extreme sort of communists and socialists and stuff in this country are dangerous because they undermine, like they don't buy into, they're not Democrats. So they tend to undermine the Democrats and who they support. They generally do not support the candidates that are, that are part of the two major parties. And so their undermining of the sort of electoral process makes it really, really difficult to win elections. And when your opposition is Donald Trump, then that becomes really problematic.
The far right is going to vote for the Republican candidate no matter what. Nikki
Correct.
Haley,
they
whoever,
are lockstep. Yeah,
they are going to vote for Team R no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the people far left who I personally know any, unless they're
it's like Hassan.
I know who they are, the famous names. I just don't know if I personally know them in my life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Issa is maybe further left than me. I don't want to speak for him.
Yeah,
so
he's definitely further left of me. Yeah.
So maybe he would identify more there, but Issa's one of the nicest guys that I know, so I have to just love Issa. So yeah, I don't personally know those people, but I agree. The lockstep of the right, they're together, but the left, that I tend to, man, we're gonna run out of time, but I'm currently agreeing with those thinking like, if they're not going to vote for Democrats, they're not Democrats. They're like a third party. That's fine, but they're not Democrats, and we probably shouldn't pretend that they are.
Right.
You know what
exactly.
I mean?
And they're not going to vote, with Democrats. They're going to vote third party for people like Jill Stein, who was paid off by the Russians. Like it undermines what they're looking for, perfection, when perfection in politicians does not exist. And instead of getting, I personally don't agree with the like lesser of two evils sort of opinion. Like there's obviously one person that is like, Kamala Harris was not a felon, right? Like she wasn't a sex pest, she hadn't grabbed women by the meow. And so there's a whole host of things. In my estimation, Donald Trump has done something every like 9 or 10 days that would have gotten any other president in history impeached.
Yeah.
Fully impeached. And the right just sort of just sort of glances over
Hey,
it. And
he's on the
so,
team. He's on the team, Earl.
he's
That's
on the
the key.
team.
He's on
Yep,
the team.
yep,
Hey,
exactly.
I've got to get
Yeah,
going.
yeah.
I
Mhm,
would love if maybe next week, if you have time to jump on,
mhm.
I don't need to talk in detail about the cancellation on the left as far as the details of what happened there, but I'd love to
Mhm.
talk about the emotions and the mind changing. And
Yeah, yeah, because
if
it
you,
definitely, if this is a change your mind kind of thing, then I have definitely over the last year and a half have changed my mind ideologically in a big, big way.
yeah,
So
well,
yeah,
it would
I
be great to talk about. So maybe next week
yeah,
or whenever
absolutely.
you're able to get on, we'll be able to do that. That'd be awesome. But anyway, I'm gonna sign off.
Okay.
I got to go back to work. Unfortunately, we all a lot of us have to get to do the job
Yeah,
thing. So that's
slave
how
to
it
the
often
grind.
goes.
Yep.
That's right. Great to see everybody. And I'll be
Alright,
here next week. Of course, Max will be doing streams. East will be doing streams. We'll do something together. But I'll be here Thursday, noon Central. Everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day.
alright. Bye, everybody.